The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening is a Game Boy game about a kid on an island. And despite this deceptively simple premise, it also serves as a place of precedent for the Zelda series, which is both strange and, frankly, amazing coming after the already stellar A Link to the Past. It was the first Zelda game released on a handheld. It was the first Zelda game to step away from many of the series' pre-established conventions, as Zelda, Ganon, the Kingdom of Hyrule, and the Triforce are nowhere to be seen. Perhaps most intriguingly, however, it's the first game to carry a sense of weight in its larger story, featuring various twists and candid character moments on the way to its heartwarming conclusion. It is the last of these precedents where we find the most impact, as through the carefully woven narrative underneath the game's exterior, we as players get the first glimpse into the development and growth of Link as a character, without even realizing it. On the surface, the plot of Link's Awakening is rather simple. The game starts with Link enduring a massive thunderstorm while in the middle of the ocean. Despite his best efforts, he falls into the salty drink, only to wake up not in Hyrule, but instead on the mysterious Koholint Island. After reclaiming his sword, it is made clear to Link via an owl that in order to leave, he must obtain 8 instruments of the sirens and use them at the top of the island to wake the Windfish. As Link progresses throughout his adventure, he hears strange messages about the dangers that could come from waking the Windfish, which inevitably climaxes with a hidden mural that tells the island's great secret. It's all a dream. Link goes on to gather all 8 instruments, defeat the nightmares inside the Windfish's egg, conjure the Windfish, and finally, wake up back on the remains of his wrecked ship. It's all a dream. This plot twist is the crux of the story, and the component that most provides its depth. Through it, everything — character interactions, enemies, bosses, the map layout, and even the game's manual — points to this being not just another adventure in which Link plays the hero, but instead a poignant look into many aspects of Link's personal struggle. Quick note first before delving into why this is. This analysis works off of the most recent version of the Zelda timeline, which has Link's Awakening come right after A Link to the Past. For those like myself who found Link's Awakening's more complex story to be rather enjoyable, there is but one man to thank: Yoshiaki Koizumi. He's more well known nowadays as the Deputy General Manager of Nintendo EPD, or the guy who hosts most major Nintendo Directs, but back in the early 1990s, he served much smaller roles. In an interview with Wired, he talks about how upon first working at Nintendo, he was responsible for game instruction manuals, which at the time ended up putting him in charge of the game's background, story, and setting in Koholint Island. What's interesting to note is the story and character building philosophy that Koizumi carried with him into his work with Nintendo. Quote, "My ambition had always been to make drama. That was my goal. Having a character, in a certain kind of world, having him go through a series of interactions to accomplish something, and creating a dramatic tension through that." We can see this sentiment reflected heavily in the game manual's contents, particularly in the background plot synopsis given within the first few pages. Not only do they give context for Link's voyage, but they also set an interesting precedent in the process. "Who knows what threats may arise for Ganon's ashes?" the restless people murmured as they knitted their brows and shook their heads. Ever vigilant, you decided to journey away from Hyrule on a quest for enlightenment, in search for wisdom that would make you better able to withstand the next threat to your homeland. The last sentence here, while referring to nothing in particular by itself, sets a precedent, particularly with the last phrase, in search for wisdom, or enlightenment. This specific desire, the very reason for Link's voyage, will come to be fulfilled through the game in a rather unexpected way. He runs into the storm, shipwrecks, and lands on the mysterious Koholint Island. Now, Koholint Island is certainly among the most peculiar central locations of any game in the franchise, and in many ways, it is a place of irrational contradictions. It separates itself from pre-established Zelda convention in numerous ways. instead opting to bring a much lighter tone than that of Link to the Past, a largely new set of environments with a unique cast of characters, and a completely changed deific structure revolving around an obscenely ornate fish inside of a giant egg. And yet, despite these fundamental shifts in convention, there still resides a pervasive sense of familiarity in the proceedings, one that challenges a key assertion of the story. The game insists multiple times that even though Link is indeed asleep and in need of awakening, this island is a dream of the winged fish's own creation. Evidence may suggest, though, that if this is the case, then it is either based off of, or co-created by, the contents of Link's own mind. To explain why, let's first look at the island's geographical layout. Yes, this island is certainly not Hyrule, but it shares a shockingly large number of parallels with the overworld of Link to the Past. Both have a small, quaint main town in the west, with the Lost Woods area just to the north of it. Both have a wide mountain range that covers nearly the entire northern region. Both have areas largely composed of water in the northeast, a castle toward the center, and a sandy area in the southwest. It's a large series of coincidences that can only really go attributed to Link. But it doesn't stop there. Yes, NPCs are largely unique to Link's Awakening, but at the same time numerous enemies make their appearance from A Link to the Past. Zelda, Ganon, and the Triforce are physically absent, but their shadows subtly remain. Link, upon seeing Marin for the first time, mistakes her for Princess Zelda, and the manual even goes out of its way to mention that they share an uncanny resemblance. And the Nightmare boss, as one of its many forms, transforms into Ganon. Perhaps the one element that ties these contradictions together, however, is the island's name, Koholint. When translated from the Japanese kanji to English, with ko meaning child and ho meaning protection, you get a greater sense of the island's true purpose. It's a safeguard, a protective haven of innocence, an innocence specific to Link's childhood. More specifically, it encapsulates the life that this incarnation of Link had before the events of A Link to the Past, the one that he might have continued living if he were never the chosen hero. Look back at the evidence I just presented, except the part about Ganon. I'll get to that in a bit. This reality would explain the pervasive sense of innocence and lightheartedness that permeates throughout the adventure. It explains the resemblances in geography and enemy types, while also doing away with any of the Zelda conventions. Link's childhood made manifest doesn't contain any references to Hyrule Castle, or directly at least, to Princess Zelda, because it would have no reason to. Prior to A Link to the Past, Link is nothing but a common citizen, with nothing special to his name. Only when he is called to venture as chosen does he become familiar with these tropes. It explains why he never makes any attempt to leave the island by boat or by raft, as this is a part of his life that he would cherish, one that, by cruel twist of fate, was taken from him. The first moments of A Link to the Past see Link, while still dreaming, summoned via telepathic call from Princess Zelda to take up arms and save her. Upon waking up, despite his uncle's warning, he gets out of bed and ventures off into what can only be described as a nightmare scenario for his age. Take a step back for a moment and look at what happens here. He ventures off into a forbidding darkness shrouded by rain to a castle usurped by countless soldiers possessed by evil. This already presents a worst-case scenario for a would-be Knight of Hyrule, but it only cements itself further when he ventures inside the castle and faces the immediate death of his uncle in battle. Let me reiterate that. Link comes head-to-head with the mortality of a family member. This would be traumatizing for a kid of his age, and instead he must conceal his emotions and carry on with his fated quest to save Zelda and the rest of Hyrule. He has no opportunity for emotional authenticity or candid discussion, as the game spends much of its dialogue talking at Link rather than with him. It makes sense then for Link's Awakening to offer a cast of mostly welcoming, endearing characters, with the most complex and curious of these being Marin. She's the first character Link sees upon waking up at the beginning of the game, and from there, she goes on to provide multiple roles for him. No scene depicts these roles better than their rather intimate conversation on the beach in the game's second act. The scene itself is revolutionary for the Zelda franchise, for being its first true character moment, and it is somewhat of a precursor to later entries like Spirit Tracks and Skyward Sword that would delve more heavily into the relationship between Link and Zelda. Marin's first, more obvious role, then, is as a close companion, and possibly romantic partner to Link. Given that he's a bit older now than in A Link to the Past, this would be about the age where romantic relationships would start being of interest, and this dream environment provides him the fleeting solace with which to do so. Her second role is a bit harder to decipher, and it requires close attention to what she says during the conversation. I wonder where these coconut trees come from. Terran says there is nothing beyond the sea, but I believe there must be something over there. When I discovered you, my heart skipped a beat. I thought, this person has come to give us a message. If I was a seagull, I would fly as far as I could. I would fly to faraway places and sing for many people. If I wish to the windfish, I hope my dream will come true. It's truly sweet stuff, but notice the implications of what she's saying here. Her main goal is to leave the island, something she directly associated with Link, whom she sees in part as a messenger from outside. She presents an existential dilemma for him. In order for her to leave the island and be truly free, be truly happy, Link must first wake up from the dream. In order to mature and maintain the relationship, he must first leave his childhood behind. In this regard, Marin serves as both model and motivator for Link. Model in that she shows the maturity arc that Link must take, and motivator in that Link can only truly preserve the relationship by waking up, even with the possibility that what she describes may not come to fruition. There's just one thing that makes Link's journey to awakening a bit foreboding. For every childhood memory, there are past demons to put to rest. For every dream, a nightmare. If Koholint Island is the dream manifestation of Link's childhood innocence, then buried deep within its dungeon crevices lie manifestations of both his inner fear and unexpected adulthood, and his resentment for the loss of his childhood. Link's challenge now is to conquer them one by one and forgo his past, both good and bad. And these nightmares will do whatever they can to keep that from happening, to preserve their fragile existence. We can see this in their increasingly desperate boss dialogue as Link reaches the second half of the game's dungeons. My energy, gone. I lost. But you will be lost too, if the windfish wakes. Same as me, you are in his dream. Why did you come here? If it weren't for you, nothing would have to change. You cannot wake up the windfish. Remember, you too are in the dream. Despite their attempts, Link moves forward, and goes on to play the Ballad of the Windfish and open the Windfish Egg, a physical emblem of rebirth for Link's character. Here lies the centerpiece of Link's dark emotions, now made manifest through the forms that directly took his childhood away from him in Aghanim and Ganon. Upon defeat, Deathel attempts to make one last appeal for its preservation, directly associating its existence with Link's. This island is going to disappear. Our world is going to disappear. Our world. Our world. And then, peace and calm. Link goes on to encounter the Windfish, the propagator or co-creator of the dream, however you choose to interpret it, who gives a last assuring message, contrary to that of the nightmares. Someday, thou may recall this island. That memory must be the real dream world. Link is assured now that even though he will have to leave the dream world, and in turn his childhood innocence, behind, the memory will always be with him. The dream ends, the island disappears, Link reawakens. He has both conquered the demons and reconciled with the losses of his far-gone childhood, and can now move on with a newfound wisdom that he never would have anticipated. The game confirms this to the player when Link looks up into the air and smiles upon seeing the windfish, and, in the good ending, a small glimpse of Marin. With Link awakened, reborn, more mature, her lifelong request is now fulfilled. She will always be with him, no matter where he decides to go next. Through Link's awakening, we gain the first glimpse into Link's humanity, made manifest through the dream environment of Koholint Island and its inhabitants. It's not an epic tale on the scale of The Link to the Past. Rather, it's a tale of deep, personal and emotional turmoil on a much smaller scale, in which the evil is not a big baddie atop a foreboding castle, but instead the demons from within. Going back to Koizumi's involvement with the game for a minute, it is interesting to note the influence that his decisions would have for the series moving forward. In the same interview mentioned earlier, Koizumi had this to say: "I would sort of try to find sneaky ways to get it in without them influencing too much. For example, I always liked the idea of you coming upon another character and hearing little bits of conversation that slowly begin to reveal different parts of the story. And that was the way that I tried to work on Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. A lot of the EAD games that do seem to have a lot of story, a lot of that came from my influence. This influence over future Zelda titles is attested to by other developers as well. Eiji Aonuma and Takashi Tezuka had this to say during an Iwata Asks interview. After that, in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, all kinds of suspicious characters appeared. I didn't tell them to do it that way, but personally, I did find it considerably appealing. The staff who worked on Ocarina of Time had all played Link's Awakening, so they had a sense of how far they could go with the Zelda series. Oh, I see. That makes sense. Tezuka-san, you broadened what was permissible for Zelda without even realizing it. I guess I did. Well, I'm glad I could contribute. I'm certain it was a breakthrough element in the series. If we had proceeded from A Link to the Past straight to Ocarina of Time without Link's Awakening in between, Ocarina would have been different. Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, the next two Zelda games, go on to develop the same themes of innocence, loss, and growth that characterize this game's story. Through them, it becomes obvious that Link's Awakening laid a foundation for Link not just as a player avatar in a video game, but now as a dynamic character in a living, breathing world. Through Koholint Island, he receives the opportunity to revisit and reconcile a continued childhood that never came to fruition. Through the nightmares, he accepts and then does away with the inner fear and resentment that came with the abrupt transition to heroism. Through Marin, he discovers true relationship, leading to a memory that he will carry with him into the foreseeable future. And through this precedent, the Zelda series now has the foundation to reach new emotional depths previously untouched. And all of this from a game about a child on an island.